Going live.
Going live. We are live. Hello. Hello, people watching this. Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone actually in the thing right now or what, but it's pretty great. We're live.
Yeah, never done this before, so.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this is for my buddy Sean, who's kind enough to ask.
Word.
You know, and he asked me one day, he's like, "How do you do that thing that you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of do a lot of things."
Want to know how art? How do art?
How art? And my first question to him was, which art? Because he's seen a lot of my various projects, and various projects require various tools, and so I kind of put this together for him. And it's kind of an introduction to, what is digital art? What's some of the vocabulary around it? How do you do it? And it's going to be wrapping up with a demo on just putting together a piece and seeing what that looks like. Some basic tools, some basic concepts, and yeah, should be good. And thanks for helping my wonderful writer and PR guy, Hype Man.
Hi, that's me. Yep. I really meant to have a beer for this, and I don't have one, and I'm a little sad. But that's okay. I will plan better next time.
It is never too late. I mean, I'm about to start into it. Why don't you go grab one?
Okay, I'm gonna run and grab a beer. I'll be right back. Don't art too hard while I'm gone.
I'll try not to.
Okay.
I feel an artery bulging though. I might be
artery. Swish.
Oh.
Get
Fucked.
it.
Go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boom. I'll be right back.
This is my introduction to digital art. If you are already drawing on the computer, a lot of these things are going to be probably very familiar to you. If you have never drawn on a computer, but you draw in your spare time, then hello, welcome. This is made for you. If you have never drawn before, and you feel like you should or you want to, well, go ahead and start. This may be less useful to you because this is not going to be a tutorial about sketching or how to draw or anything like that. It's really just going to go over some of the techniques to port what you already know into the digital format. So, with further ado, also, get confused or you want to go back. This is all being recorded on YouTube, so no worries. Also, I'll make my slides freely available so you can help yourself. Don't feel like you have to take notes or anything because they're all right here. So, who am I, and why should you guys trust me?
Hello, I'm back. Friends don't let friends 40K without beer. Okay, please continue.
Excellent.
So who are you, Kaiser? Why should I trust you?
Yeah, that's a good fucking question. So I am, I've been drawing digitally for about 17 years. So most of the time I've been alive, and been a software designer for the past 5, and hopefully for many more. I've been a print tech for 4 years before that, and I still work in that capacity at my current job. I handle some of their wide format prints. I handle our high capacity print pre-process type stuff. And I have experience in front-end development. I've put together multiple websites, some even for our clients. I know I have some idea of what it takes to get some imagery up on there. And I also mentor at MIT, so I do teach some Photoshop classes for the 2009 cornerstone class in engineering. And I did my undergrad at RIT in new media design, which is kind of ventures into development, motion design, 3D, a little bit of everything. And I also have candy, so you should definitely get in my van.
Oh. Well, I mean, well, yeah. I have a quick question for our fans who are just interested in, who are coming here for the comic. This is a great question to ask with this horrifying image in the background. How long have you been grim-darkened, Kaiser? When did you start your love affair with the 41st millennium and all of its horribleness?
Well, I think I was initially introduced to the concept of orcs by a former classmate back in college, and I loved everything about them. They were pretty pretty hilarious. I think one of the first things though were the Noise Marines from like one of the first edition Noise Marines. They're
Oh, cool.
the whole hair thing, amazing.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Exactly.
Awesome. So what the fuck is going on with this
so,
guy?
You know, digital art can be really just about anything. You see it every day. If you browse the internet, you know, there's chances are you're looking at constantly, right? You know, and it can take many shapes. This is some of Galoo Game Lady's work. You know, this is a piece that was drawn digitally on top of one of the backgrounds from the game that she was playing, Fallout.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every single asset was created on a computer,
right,
down to post-production for a traditional piece, like D. Forrest's work on the Stark Angel print. And really the only things he did digitally here was a little bit of cleanup, and he added halftone. Everything else was done. So it's effectively mixed medium. Down to concepting and ideation, to get ready for my comics and other things. And even production for like shirts and sales and posters and those sort of things, like Moses Nestor's work here.
Yeah, that's Moses' shirt. I just don't know. I don't know if anyone really is into the Avengers. They're kind of niche. And corgis also. I don't really know if anyone thinks dogs are cute. I don't know if that's going to sell.
Yeah, Shibas aren't really a big thing either.
Yeah.
He might be barking up the tree.
Yeah, it's a long shot, but you know, if you've got a passion.
So my point is that you know, digital art is really just another tool in your toolbox. You know, there's the adage of the how should be informed by the why, which is popular in software design and UX and UI, and it's the whole idea that really the way you do something should come after examining what it is you have to do. And not, you know, one tool will not work for every problem. So, that said, let's examine some of our tools. And I would normally put this a little farther back in the presentation, but if you guys are sitting there and you want to join in with a demo later, these are some of the programs you could use. If you have them, great. If you don't and you're looking for one, this might give you an idea of something you could download in the time that we're going over this lecture portion, and you could join in later. So.
Yeah.
Photoshop. Everybody's heard of it. It's your multi-tool. It's popular. It's been around for, you know, the last 20-some years. They've obviously kind of perfected their art and what it is. You know, it's got its drawbacks, but one of the drawbacks is that it does a ton of things, and sometimes it's really hard to find them all. It's a little bloated, it's a little massive, and it's very expensive. They've recently moved to a new funding, you know, new price model where you have to purchase it by month, and $10 a month is seems to be a promotion they're doing right now. But normally it looks like it's $30 a month, and you have to buy it for a year. And yeah, frankly, the idea of not owning a my creation tool is kind of terrifying to me, because like, you know, if I lose my job in a month and I can't open, you know, thousands of hours worth of work that I've worked on. So that's fortunately, you know, there's some competitors giving them a run for their money. Manga Studio is something many of my friends use. It's also good for illustration, comic layouts. They have some great 3D tools to get you there. They have some animation capacity, and once you buy it, it's bought. You always have it. It's $50.
50. That's fantastic. I mean, like CS2 when you got, or like whatever, so CS6, like whatever version of Photoshop it was. I remember years ago, you're looking at like
CS6, yeah.
CS6, right? You were looking at like $600 or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right about there, and that might have even been student pricing. I think I got it for $400 a few years ago.
Phew.
And I've still got it. So, and I'll be using it for a while. Not quite sure what will happen when I have to move on. I'll see. Book Pro. That's a newest competitor coming from Autodesk. It seems like a pretty solid piece of software. It's focused primarily for tablets, such as the Windows Surface.
Cool.
And the other myriad of Android tablets that are just like falling all over the place, pumping out. Tons of tablets.
Yeah.
And then finally, we've got Krita, which you know, my bestie introduced me to recently, and I checked it out. It's pretty solid. This is a open source free program. You know, it's got illustration, animation capabilities, And the cool thing is, it really seems like it does just about everything, and they're working on it. It could use some TLC in the UI side, so like, the usability is still a little clunky, but for an open source and free project, it's really amazing. So I hope to keep doing that thing that they're doing. They have a Kickstarter going on right now that I've contributed to. I hope that they become a real competitor to Photoshop in the future.
Nice.
There are many, many, many more out there, depending on what you're doing. If you've got something that works for you, like Illustrator or what have you, or one of the many vector programs that work better than these, by all means, use it. Use what you're comfortable with. And speaking of comfort, you should definitely pick up a tablet. And tablets are awesome. They're a pad with a pen that has levers, pressure sensitivity. And the most important bits on these pens are that, you are recording that pressure sensitivity with the tip. They have an eraser at the back, which is very handy. And then you want a button on the side for your right click, or, for mapping for other things like undo or color picker, or, you take your pick. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Wacom is the obvious brand name out there, but Huey, I believe, Huion was the brand that one of my friends who's a professional comic artist uses, and that's like a fourth of the price and works just about as well. That's the device down on the bottom left. And then, the device on the right is like 4 times the cost. But that one, the device on the right is actually something I'm lucky enough to have because my employer got it for me. But, Cintiqs, Wacom, they're awesome. But get a tablet. It just, it's comfortable. And it will also allow you to draw that much easier.
Nice.
DPI and PPI. Now we're getting into a quick segment on some vocabulary. These are some popular terms that you'll hear that can throw you off, but are still pretty important to know. So, what are these and why do they only matter sometimes? Well, DPI is actually dots per inch, and you've probably heard this a lot. You may have actually kind of associated with a misnomer, which is that it was relevant to your screen size or your image size. It's really not. It's relevant to printing. And physical dot density on the page, that's a CMYK. It's where your reds are, your blues are, your yellows are, not necessarily what your pixel color is. And the higher your DPI is, the crisper the print's going to be. So this is everything to do with like the mechanical aspect of printing. On the other hand, it can sometimes be applied to monitors, but not in the way that you think. It's referring to the diodes that exist within a pixel, the RGB colors themselves. On the other hand, you have PPI, which is pixels per inch. This is relevant to web design, screen size, and printing, but here's the catch. It varies widely by device, from 67 PPI, or some old CRTs that still lurk around in your mom's house, to over 500 for mobile. In fact, a phone just came out that has over 2,000 PPI. It's really ridiculous. And
insane.
Insane. And because of that, you have kind of minimal control over how big your image is going to be displayed. Now on web, they've been accounting for this for years. There's a lot of clever percentile work that goes on, but if you've ever gone home and looked at your mom's computer and wondered why, despite it being about 16 inches wide, it only seems to have about 800 pixels on the horizontal, yet your phone somehow has 2,000, that's the PPI. And what this means is on the web, your DPI isn't really going to matter because they're going to look about the same. If an image is 1,000 pixels high and 700 pixels deep, and one is 10 DPI and the other is 1,000 DPI, they're really not going to look too different. And that's because that's just metadata that's stored for whenever it's going to print. And that's not even DPI, it's supposed to be PPI.
Gotcha.
Now, when you're printing, it's kind of a different story. So let's say you have a picture, and that picture is about 1,000 pixels high and 700 pixels deep, and you want to print this. Well, if you print it at 300 dpi, that 1,000 pixels is going to be consumed within 3.3 forever inches.
It's very modern. You know, he's lost in the negative space.
Really, this is the best portrait of talent that could really be done in the art sense. It's he is very lost in space. So
yeah, true. Yeah, wow. No, it gets into his character. You know, love it.
It's fucking Richard.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, stretch this to fill a 20-inch by to make all 1,000 pixels fit across a 20-inch space. You're going to have to, stretch it so that only 50 pixels exist within an inch, and your image is going to become extremely pixelated. So, you know,
and if you're pixelated, you will be forever alone.
Forever alone in the wood. But he looks so much happier there when you can see him up close.
Absolutely.
How does one apply this? Well, so there's a few things you should know. 300 ppi is high quality. Most printers can print higher, but frankly, most people aren't going to notice between 300 and 150. So that's just kind of how it is. If you see somebody coming towards your print and they've got a magnifying glass, you could probably just punch them in the face and no one will arrest you. Now, if you want to print something that's 20 by 30 inches, 20 times 300, 6,000, 30 times 300, that's 9,000. You know, that's a pretty big image, but that's going to be high quality. But frankly, if your computer can't handle that, if you drop down to 150 ppi and have that amount, it's going to suffice. Nobody's going to be able to tell.
What would keep your computer from handling that? Graphics card or the program you're using or just your processor or whatever?
It could be any number of things. Yeah. There's all kinds of ways to optimize your computer to work on larger images, whether it's enabling OpenGL on your your Photoshop, or if it's closing other programs. Sometimes you can add more RAM, but really it's generally a split between the bottleneck is in the CPU and your RAM, although some programs will accept GPU optimization, and the GPU can handle some of that load.
Neat.
Photoshop and Autodesk come to mind. I don't know if their new drawing application does that. Chances are it does it automatically. So
cool. For purposes of printing, what PPI were our posters printed in?
Well, so the posters were printed at 300. You know, I originally drew that image to be used as a banner, so it's actually large. And the banner itself was printed at 100 dpi because since it's a banner, everyone's going to be viewing it from at least a distance of 4 feet.
Right.
And to be a little, the quality loss at the base size is fine.
Cool.
And that shrinks down to a poster size very well.
Neat. Wow. And the posters turned out looking really great. And we'll have some of them for sale.
Oh,
fascinating.
Very smooth, Richard. Very smooth. So some other considerations you should probably have is, do you want your piece to be viewed on the landscape or portrait? Are people going to be looking at it on the phone primarily, where it's typically vertical, or are they going to be browsing on their computer? In the case of our comic, we decided to go horizontal because we looked at some of the statistics at the time and saw that most webcomics were being viewed on a monitor. Now that might change in time, but they still look pretty nice on the phone, and we'll get to that later. Are you designing a shirt, bag, hat, or poster? These will have to be printed onto this fabric eventually, and whenever it is, will it be printed digitally or by silkscreen? Now, a silkscreen is what you may or may not have heard of is literally a screen that has holes in it, squeegee paint off one color at a time onto a surface. And the more colors there are, the more expensive it gets. So oftentimes these shirts or prints are limited to anywhere between 1 and 5 colors. Now your printers will vary, but you'll also have to decide what color you're going to be printing on top of. If you're printing digitally, you may or may not be able to print on a dark color because it could show through. And figure out these limitations, because some of them do have processes so that you do that, but they also have nifty things. There's some inks that can become fuzzy once they are worn. There's some inks that can become glow in the dark or become a foil. You know, there's all kinds of things you can do whenever you're printing through a nice studio. You just have to ask them and get to know your printer, and they'll help you through the process. They'll also help you set up your bleeds, slugs, and margins. If you're working on a print that has to be trimmed, you're going to have to keep in mind that there's going to be a margin to the edge of the page, and there's going to be the bleed where that intersects with your margin. That's going to be lost when it's cut away, and a slug is the portion that is in the crook of the book. If you're printing a book or a booklet or a comic, there's going to be a portion that kind of gets stapled or consumed or will be hard to see, and that portion is referred to as the slug. So, you know, if you're designing for something that's going to be trimmed, make sure you leave extra space on the outside. What distance is it typically viewed from? You know, the trouble of, or the task of creating a comic or an illustration may be vastly different from creating a poster. You know, this is a problem that's encountered often whenever you're designing an interface for, say, a touchscreen TV versus a phone. You know, these are two completely different distances that's going to be viewed from that may require text, that, you know, you may want line size to match up to its original medium. For example, with the comic, you get used to seeing a certain line width with characters, and whenever we had to make the poster, we had to up that line width dramatically, so whenever it was printed that size, it looked about the same in style. And if you're working big, it's always good to consider vector as an alternative. Now, raster and vector, you know, this is the stuff that your stuff is actually made out of, but what is it exactly? Now,
tell us!
Yes, I will tell you. Raster imaging is actually a grid of pixels. You know, these are most of the images you're going to find online. If an image is 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, it will always be 1,000 by 1,000 pixels until you resize it. If you resize it smaller, that data is going to be lost. If you resize it larger, you're going to have to create new data, and this will result in the image becoming fuzzy. So it's, you know, it's very dependent on that initial resolution in which it was created. And then it's stored as a PNG, a JPEG, a GIF, you know, many others. You know, if you've browsed the internet, you've seen thousands of raster images. They're your typical picture. And then this means that if you want it to be high quality, it generally has to be a very large file size. Alternatively, you have vector imaging, which is, you're looking at vector imaging right now. You know, it makes up the text on the screen. It's comprised entirely of points and trajectories. It's actually a mathematical equation that informs the shape of a thing. It's resolution independent, so you can size it as large or as small as you like, and it will always keep its crispness. It's often stored as an SVG on the web, or an AI as a native format on Illustrator, and there's many, many others as well. This cross-pollinates with 3D often. Splines and other shapes within 3D objects are often informed by vectors and can be imported and exported to try and get some of these shapes right. But to do so requires a different order of effort. It's not always as easy as laying an airbrush on the screen or, you know, scribbling to make something look about how you like. Now, Illustrator has come up with a lot of very clever ways to make the process very similar, but I would argue that it's not so simple, especially for beginners. And this is, you know, example of a raster image. Now, someone could set off to prove me wrong and recreate this in vector, but it would probably take them a lot longer than it took me to create this as a raster. You can see it has a lot of texture. There's a lot of gradients and like clouding effects that are difficult to achieve whenever you're working straight from a mathematical, you know, outline. Alternatively, and this is a very simple version, you know, here's some vector illustrations of an old party. These can be resized to any size I like, as opposed to this last illustration that could really, you know, it could get as big as a banner, but that's about it. a building, you know, and print it as a sticker. So if you've got a computer that can only handle so much, vector can be a really good way to get around that if you want to do large prints. And oftentimes you don't have to settle for something, you know, so simple as base as these. You know, there's always a comfortable midway in between these two mediums, where you can take raster textures and apply them over top of a vector illustration, or even go in and paint on it a little bit and integrate the two.
Poor Cape.
Poor Cape, getting eaten by a sheep. So you probably get it by now, but why should you care? You know, these are a lot of vocabulary and concepts that you may or may not have to deal with. Maybe you just want to draw. Maybe you just want to sketch. Maybe you're learning and you really don't care about all the shirt stuff. Well, you know, that's a good point. But in the future, you may have to come across a project, or you may be asked to work on a set of cards, like I was about 5 years ago at my current job. And they wanted to create a deck of what they call design axioms. And you can actually find these online. There's a website where you can look at them all if you like. And I was asked to create these, and I decided I wanted to make them in vector because I thought the look matched kind of what my boss was going for. And I didn't realize until later that they also wanted to print them out on like very large 40-inch tall posters. And you know, I'd done them kind of half in vector and half not. So whenever I resized them, there was a lot I had to redo. You know, I lost tens of hours redoing specific shapes that I'd just done with a pencil because, or a brush, because I was just running low on time or I'd gotten tired. And you know, learning from this experience, when we created our next set of cards, Health Axioms, which you can also find online. These are both open source projects. You can download the files. You can play with them if you like. You can print them out. They're also distributed at hospitals in the local area. These are entirely vector. So now there's some clinics that are reaching out to us to have these printed on like ceiling to floor vinyl posters, you know, 8-9 feet tall, and getting them on there is resizing the image and then reapplying a texture that was saved in its original format separately. So through a little process and planning, and through some error, some success and failure, you know, the process was improved. I saved a lot of time, and through thinking out my problem a little bit more before jumping to creation, I saved myself some grief.
Basically, plan ahead, and you don't have to do a bunch of like redo stuff, right?
Yeah, basically.
No.
And this is a concept that whenever we started on Eagle Ordinary, we also tried to apply. You know, from designing for the website to developing the format that the comic was going to be in. You can see here was one of the early sketches of the comic in a vertical format. Whenever we were playing with, you know, what do we want this thing to look like? You know, I did some research on like typical print sizes for paper. Not that it was ever going to be printed on paper because it's a GW property, but you know, if I ever wanted to print it out for fun or a portfolio, I wanted to make that a very simple process. And so I went with kind of a simple 3x4 ratio on the horizontal, which is easily viewed on most monitors. Because this wasn't just a project for me. It was like it was a passion project, you know, something I really wanted to do, but I also wanted the opportunity to make something beautiful and do it right. So, and part of the problem with that is I really love, you know, while I love painting, that takes a while and it's kind of chaotic. One painting can kind of come out pretty different from the other. And so there needs to be a process involved, a repeatable process that can be measured in time and can be duplicated, whether I was stressed or sick or traveling and there were weird light conditions. And so of creating the comic was designed to be repeatable.
Oh,
and so
is that a sneak peek of next week's comic?
Thank you, Richard.
My God. I also have to say that last image of that knight from your what is that, your
game,
your Pendragon game. I think that's one of your best. I love that image.
Yeah, that one came out pretty good. That was the first thing I painted on this tablet, and I was trying to figure it out.
He's a Banff, clearly, but like freckles, you know, it's a good combo.
Yeah, right? I thought so. And so we're going to get into a bit of the process of Eagle Ordinary to see how some of these concepts of designing a process kind of speed it up. And we're looking right now at some of the scripts that Richard and Dave give me. And that script gets turned into thumbnails and like variations into what the page could look like. And then that gets passed off to Moses, who points out some things I could be doing better, and slaps me around until I perfect the process a bit more, and I end up with some pencils that get the idea across a little better, and you can see where things have been moved around. It's very rough. And now from this point on is where everything kind of becomes standardized. The height and the width are the same as for every page. I have brushes that I have created in the art program I use, Photoshop, that I have a medium width, a heavy width, and I have a thin width, so the lines are generally always the same size. The backgrounds are generally copied in color, like color tone from the past page, or if it's a new page, I'll try to do them in a well-lighted position since they're going to be copied for several pages. And their flat colors, their skin colors are all kind of saved within this massive document I have for what everyone's color for everything is. And this is kind of an older file where I had night and day pre-done, but it didn't work out so well. So what I ended up doing is I made a more dynamic document where the background colors can change and automatically change the colors of the skin tones and objects. So that saves me a lot of time. It keeps everything kind of the same, and it saves me a lot of grief. And so, back to those flats, everything gets shaded with one layer, one color. It's just the magenta. And then everything gets highlighted with the inverse of that layer. So, and we'll be going into layers a little bit whenever we touch on the program. It's basically just like cellophane sheets that you might have seen your teacher use to explain concepts of math or algebra back in the day. These little clear plastic sheets that stack on top of each other. Layers are pretty much the same thing. So while there's a layer with all the characters' colors, there's another layer that's entirely shadows, and this is just a layer that sits on top and shades everything. That layer gets selected and inversed, and that creates the lighting layer, which is always the same yellow, or may change if the light source color changes. And then finally, there's or for the just setting up portion, there's your layer styles. So things like Grig's visor, they all have little presets that do most of the work for me. We'll touch on that as well. Highlights, some environmental effects, a vignette, and some color adjustments that help get the image to that finished kind of paintery state without any of the work that goes into making something really paintery, and get the word bubbles on there and everything. So what are some takeaways from this? What can this help with your process? Well,
are you going to tell us?
I am.
Oh, good.
Yep. So use what works for you. There generally isn't a wrong answer. If you enjoy using Illustrator to make paintings, and all the power to you. There's a lot of people who do that. I think it's the pieces they make are gorgeous. I also think it takes a lot of time. Inversely, if you want to use Photoshop to create vector, it can totally do it. If you use GIMP or Krita and that works for you, just keep doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. But be open to new ideas as well. Because using the right tool for the job will make your life easier. It'll save you time. A little planning goes a long way. And DPI and PPI don't matter unless you intend to print or you really, really care about web development. So don't really worry about that toggle. What's really important is your pixel size. Make sure you're working at a pixel size that will preserve the highest fidelity of your image that you can work on comfortably. And unless you're just having fun, like sketching, design a process. It'll just make your life easier. It'll help develop your understanding of what you're doing. Just like tutorials and passion projects will also help you improve. If you want to, or you want to learn 3D, or you want to learn animation, do something you love. Pick a project you like. Pick something in your community, like a food drive or the ASPCA, and try and figure out something you can do to help them. If you love something, you'll be more willing to work through problems and come up with solutions. Get a tablet, even if you don't draw. It's very comfortable once you've done it for a while. And, you know, frankly, I must spend most of my day on a computer and my wrist feels great. So anyways, that's the gist of that guy. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but feel free to ask as we move on to the drawing portion.
I guess I'll ask a quick question. So you went over a lot of like broad, you know, digital art concepts for just like getting good at sketching.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's like a whole other topic. You get into a whole other thing on illustration. Yeah. Any books or anything you recommend for someone who wants to take their first steps into illustration?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see here. Did I put it in Dropbox? So if you want to get better at just sketching or illustration, my #1 recommendation is attend some live drawing classes. Like if you can do real people, that's the best thing you can possibly do for yourself. Try to stay away from stylized or referencing comics because it'll get you into bad habits from the get-go. There's nothing wrong with drawing stylized pictures, comics or cartooning at all. But if you can start off from a point of an intrinsic understanding of anatomy or line or shading or, you know, texture, that translates really easily towards a stylized medium, much easier than the other way around. And so that would probably be my #1 recommendation. You know, just draw people you see, draw characters you think up. Damn it. You know what? Maybe this is on Google Drive. I'll find it a little later and post in the links. But there are some really good drawing books out there too. And I'm bummed I can't find this one. So yeah, I'll look it up. It's probably on my computer at work. But and then just like keep doing it and don't force yourself to do it. If you're tired of it, then don't do it unless it's your job, in which case you kind of made that bed for yourself and you're just going to have to keep doing it. So or you have to find something else to do. So anyways, this is Photoshop. Now some of you may be using Krita, some of you may be using another program entirely, so I'm going to stick to kind of universal concepts. And I want to go over a couple things at the start. #1 is just a quick overview of the program. I'm not going to go in depth because there are many tutorials out there that do that. I'm going to focus this tutorial on just like a very basic getting your sketch to an exported product. So this is a quick aside I wanted to do where we're going to take this sketch and we're going to make it into you know, something we could work from the Lineart on the page from. And I picked this one because it was particularly challenging. You know, it's kind of unideal. It's a photograph. It was taken at an angle. It's blurry. It's gray. You know, there's still pencil lines. So I think it's the ideal candidate for you know, porting into Photoshop. So you've got your tool palette on the left here. There's all kinds of tools. If you hover over them, they'll tell you what they are. You know, play with these a little bit. Look up demos on them. They'll help a lot. I am going to explain the tools I use. I'm not going to give a general overview. These over here is your layers palette. This is probably one of the most important parts of this program. If you've never used layers before, welcome. And I'll explain how to use them as best I can. So #1 thing to do this, you know, our first task for making this image kind of painting ready would be to try and crop out all the noise on the outside. So I'm going to use this cropping tool over here. You can also get to it by hitting C. That's a hotkey. Every program you come across is going to have a crop tool. I'm just going to kind of crop in on this image here. I'll kind of crop out some of that cruft. And now the next thing is one of my favorite filters. And this is on Photoshop, it's on Krita, and it's your curves tool. And now your curves represents your values from black to white, and it lets you modify those. So I'm going to take this little doohickey up here, and I'm going to move it right to the left of this little gray spike, and that's where all the grays live on this palette. And so if I move it over here, you can see it's going to eliminate most of that noise. And if I take the lower colors down here, and if I move it up to this spike, it's going to make our blacks black. And if I grab the line somewhere in between and move it up, it's going to start thinning out some of those pencil lines, and I can regroup some of the colors there. And you can see right away that's going to, you know, improve our image quality vastly. And so I'm going to hit OK and save that. And I'm going to adjust my tablet so I can get to it a little better. It's very hot today, so I'm kind of adjusting into a different position than usual. So I'm going to just erase some of this crap. And there you go. You've got the startings of an image that you can start to draw on top of. And you can go in with the eraser and start to clean up some of these pencil lines here. And you'll be left with something that you can add another layer to and start coloring in. So, you know, every program is going to have a different button for where you add a new layer. Photoshop's is here. And you can see it creates a new layer here. It's transparent, as shown by these little checker marks in the box there. And I'm just going to make that a multiply layer. Now you'll notice that there's all kinds of different settings here. And your layer styles are kind of your friend. There's a whole you know, library of them here, and they all do myriad different things. And I typically use anywhere between like 6 or 8 of them. They're pretty useful for different stuff. Again, there's tons of great tutorials out there, so I won't go terribly in depth. I'll just show you what I use. So I'm going to make this layer multiply, and what multiply does is it basically shows through, right? I compare it to watercolors. And what I'm doing here is I double clicked on this little box up here. If you've got your color palette here, you'll be able to see all this. You know, Krita's got its own sort of thing for adjusting color. If you don't see this, or if you don't see your layer palette, or if you don't see anything here that you want to be here, you can go to Window, and you'll find some of the boxes here. And Krita, there's a whole setup for your sidebar, so you can make sure that guy's out there. And once you've got that box up, you can go in, you can pick what color you want, go basic skin tone, and you can start drawing in. You know, sometimes you won't see anything. It's like, oh, I'm drawing, what's happening? There's nothing happening. Make sure to check your tool palette. I'm still set on eraser. So I'm going to say change it to brush. You'll see I'm drawing, but my pencil is a little small. And now you'll notice something a little weird about my... What's that?
A lot of times people have that problem.
Yeah, it's, you know, you pull it out and it's just like it's too small and it's not doing the job, and
it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. So I rearranged, like I have several different brush packs. I've kind of rearranged into the way I like them. Now I'm just going to save this, and I'll see if I can. Okay, so it's save brushes. Okay, set thingy. Yes. And I'm just going to pull out the presets. So let's see, basic brushes probably. Yeah. And then I'll set that back to what everybody's used to seeing, which is small thumbnails. Still not quite right. Here we are. So this is what everyone's used to seeing who started out Photoshop. You'll have several different brushes up here. You've got your air brushes and your hard brushes. You have these little pretender brushes that are almost but not quite like the real thing. There's a whole bunch of little texture things that kind of fall short of being ultimately useful for anything. And there's this guy, which I use for years for tons of things because, you know, it's the only brush that's actually like a cool texture. Anyways, there's tons of sets of brushes out there. You know, there's some people on DeviantArt who make fantastic ones. All you have to do is search and you'll find a myriad of things. You know, find a set that works for you and you'll be kind of set to go. You know, just experiment, see what they do. I will say that some of these are pressure sensitive, some of them aren't. This one isn't. Another common problem that you'll come across is it'll look like it's skipping. You can adjust your brush right here with your brush presets, and spacing is what makes things look like they're kind of weird and wonky. You can move that right back down and you'll have a smooth line again. So you can start filling in your shape. You can adjust the dynamics of your brush by playing with these little toggles here. Again, you can find tutorials for those around. I find shape dynamics is key because then you can find something that changes shape with how hard you press down your pen. Now we'll get a little bit more into the process of this, but let's skip to the demo now that I've introduced some of the basic tools. So here's a little sketch I did of a familiar commissar you may or may not have seen before. I'm just going to switch the brushes back to how I'm used to using them. And now I'm going to switch it back to small list, large list. There we go. And so this is one of the brushes I prefer to use. I'm comfortable with it. That button I just pressed, so there's a few different things down here I'm going to explain real quick. You've got your trash can, you've got your new layer, and you have your folders, which can group layers together. You can drag and drop them in. You can move these around like so. This is very useful. I would explain why, but it's that's another thing that will become clear a little later as we get into the tutorial. So we'll get to that in time. Key down here is your effects, or not your effects, but your layer adjustments. Now these are any number of variation like filter or solid color or vector that can be adjusted later on. So this is applying itself to this layer. I can change this color. It's kind of a dynamic object, and this is a kind of a transparent layer. So that's not really doing anything. To make it more useful, I'm going to use curves, which you saw earlier. So I'm going to adjust this image so it's a little lighter, and I can focus a little bit more on the lines that I'm going to be creating. And I can just like drag this up a little bit, and there we go. So and that stays there. If I want to get rid of it, I can mask it, which is what happens when I click these little eyes. I make the page a little for a bit. So I'm going to enable that, and I'll go back to layer 1. And then I can actually start drawing. I'll adjust the brush size until I find something I like. So Richard, you were telling me about blood angels a little earlier. So I did not know that they were from a hive world.
Yeah, well, it used to be like sort of a standard Imperial world. Now it's, this ruined. I won't talk too much more about them because apparently when I talk, my face pops up on the Hangout and obscures your drawing.
Oh, here, yeah. I can set it so it stays on mine.
Oh, yay! That's a great idea.
There you go.
Awesome. Now I can yak. Yeah, I am. I'm very excited about first of all, getting a chance to play the Blood Angel. I've wanted to play in a Space Marine RP. Brother Horatio, who is my profile or my background picture on my Facebook.
Which one are you playing him in?
Well, I have a Space Marine game that we're going to try to run down here in Maryland, DC, Maryland, with a couple of the other guys I'm in a group with. And we've actually been home brewing our own Space Marine game, kind of the way that Moses has been brewing his own, because Death Watch is a big mess. Sorry, Fantasy Flight.
It's kind of a hot mess, yeah.
But it's a big old mess, and Yeah, I just got tired of dealing with it. So we started homebrewing our own little thing based off of it. We had a lot of fun homebrewing it. We're getting into the monster creation now, which is a little tedious, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
I call dibs on this image as my new avatar.
Oh, Holt?
Yes. He's my fave.
My favorite character. I'll admit it. I really like him.
Yeah. But
I'm really
so
to run the continuation of this, like after the whole Zorn extravaganza.
right.
I want to see Dave just like play Holt because that'd be kind of fantastic.
It would be.
Yeah.
I'm excited to GM it. I'll have to get Dave's notes on like what his long-term plans were for Zorn and everything else.
Jesus, Zorn.
Yeah, that was my first experience with Zorn today.
Yeah, that's that's the Zorn experience. I'd say you didn't really, some of that was a little bit of a surprise, but I feel like the spirit of the character was definitely there.
Word. We are talking about, by the way, anybody who's watching, our Dark Heresy 2 2nd edition game that we just actually wrapped up today. We finished off kind of part 1 because our GM is going to be occupied with real life for the foreseeable future in the form of a little requisition.
Little mini Dave.
Little mini Dave, a little requisition nugget of joy. So now we're going to be, and then soon we'll be kicking off the campaign with CO and the other folks there, and
That'll be real good.
I'm very excited. I'm getting into planning out the NPCs and whatnot. I'm really excited to get the write-up for you guys so we can figure out exactly how Laz and Kaz,
Yeah.
who are, I don't know, should we say whose kids they are? Is that spoilers for
Yeah.
the comic?
Yeah, leave it for now. I'm
Sure.
excited to see what they do to that poor commissar. Or really, like, he's not even a commissar. Whatever that poor bastard is, that Chalice commissar.
Yeah.
The tender.
Yep. But anyway, I'm running a game based in a hive called Novgorod, so it's all very Russian themed. It's going to be Russian Revolution kind of era on this hive, so kind of Russian Revolution in 40K. In space!
In space!
In space. So I'm excited to run that. We're going to have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see kind of how the campaign goes as we progress and who our final suite of players are. I want you guys to have a chance to play a bunch of different characters too. So.
Never showed you, I did a sketch of Tarek recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, let's see, where is that? I have kind of a friends. It's like a kind of a risk going to my desktop while I'm broadcasting, right? Huh. Yeah, can't find it. I know it's on CEO's chat, but boy, that'd be an even bigger risk. Can't so that said,
pop it up later.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see if old crotchety Tarek gets to get involved in that, or any of the other old, like the old characters there. So that'd be fun. That'd be good.
Yeah.
It's weird, because for the past, I want to say, 3-4 years, I've been playing Dark Heresy. I guess I started playing it right as I moved to Boston, so it's damn near 5 years now. We've kind of had a universe that's all sort of strung together.
Yeah, it's cool.
Games I've played, so it's nice to see everything kind of hooked together.
For sure. I'm nervous about Tarek coming in because I planned this campaign and having a fairly high body count.
Oh.
You don't want to kill anybody important to your universe, but at the same time, the universe is a big place and you will not be missed.
Well, that's kind of the point of the game, right? Is that that balance. So I don't think it'd be too heartbreaking. I mean, losing any character you care about sucks, but it's 40K, right?
What I will do actually is at the beginning of the game, just like declare that in my game that all of the characters in EO just are like straight up murdered off screen. Like there's just like a cometary collision happens and like it's just all wiped out.
literally rocks fell and everyone died.
And everyone died.
Brutal.
Rock, ROKS. Rocks. I just downloaded. I just finished downloading Battlefleet Gothic. So when we're done here, I'm a Gothic. I'm gonna do that hard.
Could you screencast that while I work on the comic?
I can, although won't all the sound come through. Also, to be honest, my internet connection is some balls, so there's a very good chance that it won't let me be on Hangouts and play BFG at the same time.
Well, you could do Twitch, like just broadcast it.
I could. I don't have a Twitch account. I could give it a shot though.
Oh, it's real simple. I mean, you're playing. Oh, it's only PC. Yeah, give it a shot. It's real.
All right, I'm gonna set up a Twitch account.
Yeah, boy. I'm always looking for like shit to watch while I'm working on this stuff, right?
Sure.
I mean, I love it, but the stuff gets boring after a while. Levels of doing the same tedium over and over again and being okay with it.
Oh, wow. There's a StarCraft match streaming on the Twitch front page.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Horrific wrecking. Wow, and yet I haven't played StarCraft since Wings of Liberty came out, the first game, really. I played like a little bit of Heart of the Swarm, but I've really fallen behind on it. Mm-hmm. And this dude's army is the same army that a buddy of mine used all the time in Wings of Liberty, even though we're now 2 full games and many, many patches. That's funny. Phoenixes are incredible, though, so it makes sense.
War never changes.
No, that's right.
Except for when it does.
Right. War never changes until the patch.
War has changed.
Nerf toss, please.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, but whenever I draw Talon and Holt standing side by side, Talon has those flat-footed boots, and Holt has probably about a half-inch heel. I'm not saying he has a complex, but maybe just a little one. So now we're just about getting to that point where we're all set. Got some basic line art going. It's worth mentioning that in Photoshop and other programs might do this too. If you hold down Shift, which is very helpful. Drawing a thorax, in which case there are no straight lines. Don't ever draw thoraxes, they're awful.
So, Kaiser, under some suggestions on volume, I'm going to mute for a little while and go through the BFG cutscenes and whatnot.
Okay.
And then I will boot up. I also have the super mundane task of having to take my laundry out of the dryer in a moment.
Life chores.
Life happens. So I'm going to mute for a little bit, but then I'll get BFG up.
Yeah, faux show. Part he doesn't have to worry about, because now we're getting into coloring, which is much less interesting. Now, I like to do my coloring in a few stages. I'll just hit the background first real quick. Backgrounds is only as painful as you let it be. Scrub and refine and work on a piece for days if you want. Usually let my backgrounds kind of fall by the wayside and compared to everything else. And I have a bunch of tools and brushes, all kinds of random things that make my life a little easier. So, I've got this weird thing with a head on it. If you're clever about it, you can kind of make it into something kind of rough. brushes you find out there will be very similar to this. But you know, don't feel bad about getting something that's a little funky. You know, as long as it works, then you're good. So for you, ruthlessly. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to do a basic wash. And now one of the things that'll help lighten up a wash for you is if you go up here to your flow. And some programs are really just going to have opacity or like smoothness or build up. And you can play with that to make build up a little slower. So I'm gonna give it a reddish tint. So kind of a sunset type thing. How nice. Poor old man probably doesn't see this kind of stuff often. And now you'll see me right click occasionally so I can change the brush size. Now the brush size already changes a little bit, but whenever I'm working on a wash, I like it to be fairly large. So I'll do that. And now I've got some more shortcuts set up to help me with backgrounds and backdrops. These are actually kind of new, so I haven't used them too much yet, but you'll see me start to use them a bit more in pages to come. So I'm just gonna quickly drop this. Now I really don't, I don't want to get into like color theory or anything like that in this one, because there's just, that's a whole topic unto itself. So I won't, but you should look it up because it's good stuff. Well, color theory can go a long way, and I'm not even that good at it. So let's see here. And now those cities are pretty sweet, but none of them really have the fire effect that I like to see with your Warhammer. So I'm just gonna quietly add some spires. I'm gonna up my flow so it's a little easy. Add some flying buttresses. Oops. There we go. And now I'm using an eyedropper to pick up some colors. Eyedropper will be accessed differently depending on your program. I have mapped mine to a button, but you can access it over here. I don't think I've ever really used that button. You can hold down I on your keyboard or Alt, and you can usually pull up the eyedropper, just that simple. You use the eyedropper so often, or at least I recommend it, that it should be pretty easily accessible. If not, you're probably going to give yourself a little bit of a hard time. So I'm actually going to move this down a little bit and change the perspective so I don't have to bother with that background. And then I can just kind of take some shrubbery over the back there, and I'm just going to just kind of a shadow. And again, I have all these little for doing shrubbery. There have been times in the past when I've tried to do comics, and I never really worked up the nerve for it for a few reasons. One, I have a hard time getting excited about my own ideas. You know, part of the reason I was really psyched to work on this was that other people had done it with me, and it was kind of their as much as mine. But also, they tended to take place in woods, because I kind of love those organic shapes, trees, forests, woods. But I used to do every single individual leaf separately, and boy, that is a mind killer. So eventually I wisened up. I got some brushes. My brushes do my work for me, and life has been better ever since. So your takeaway there is go out and get some brushes. Those are great. I'm just gonna put the wall here. Now, as you can see, this is all real basic painting stuff. I'm not really using any layers. It's just supposed to be kind of a very quick, very rough, backdrop. I'm not really worried about making it super accurate or making it high fidelity, because in the end, that's not going to be where people are looking. Not everyone is going to render like this, and that's okay. Some people like to, really go into detail on every little thing. And there's definitely a style behind that. I really, I love looking at those pieces. I love looking at the detail and the love that goes into them. But frankly, I guess I'm a little bit more of a lazy designer. I can't be asked. I really just want to finish up what I'm doing and move on to the next thing as soon as possible. Unless it's something that's like a real, passion thing that I'm working on. So I'm always looking for corners to not cut so much as polish very quickly and move on. Maybe that is why I just don't do this professionally. Besides, software is not all right. All right. There has to be a good mouse texture in here somewhere. There. I don't really know how to check if anybody actually has questions. Maybe there's text here. Don't be afraid to ask them. My question asking guy has gone off to do his laundry, but if I see them, I will do my best to answer them. I'm just doing some quick highlights again. This is all simple background layer stuff, and I'm gonna very quickly just kind of clean this up, just so I don't have to look at all the mess. And I'm gonna do so with a transparent brush. So just some quick note: if you are working with transparencies, this gives you the ability to change the color of their background. So I could make the background very dark back here. And as you can see, this background, shows up on it. Now I can, if I were to go back and if I were to erase this, this outer edge with white, I'm going to ruin this transparency effect I have. And, therefore just kind of any chance I have of putting this on a different color background, which, I may never, but the chance exists. And so I'm going to take care to preserve that by using the eraser instead. And I'll use just kind of a brush there to clean up these edges. And kind of make them a little bit more uniform. I think I used a sponge before. And now I'm going to start in on the second layer. And this is really about filling in a character and making yourself a layer mask. Now I created another layer over here. I'm not concerned about color at this point. I'm just concerned about opacity. And what that means is just like the existence of pigment in a certain area on the layer, because once that color is there, once that opacity is there, I can lock the opacity, and then I can make it so no matter what color I put down, it really only changes anything on that layer, and that will save you some headaches. So why that's useful will become clear in just a moment. So I'm going to work with the edges, and I'm just going to clean those up a little bit first. And then I should be able to select the entire inner portion and fill that with one fell swoop. Hey, Alex. I can just fill this. Let's see what this is about. So let me just explain what I'm doing there. So now that I've got this outline, I want to fill this area. So the best way to do that is to simply use my magic wand. Now there's all kinds of selection tools over here. There's whole tutorials that kind of concern themselves with selections. I have made one for a tutorial that I put together on map making. I would suggest looking at those. That's a whole like 2-hour long segment that's just not worth going into here. I'm going to use the magic wand tool. I'm going to go up into my settings here, and I'm going to deselect the sample all layers. Yours will probably come with its own. I'm going to move the tolerance up a little bit. Now the tolerance is a value that ranges between 0 and 255. 255 being the darkest, or in this case, the most varied range. 0 being only selecting colors of its own kind. And everywhere in between there is, well, somewhere in between there. Now, opacity kind of lives in a different area, so it's not really going to select any more or less. It's only going to select things that are, you know, don't have a color. Once I select a color, then it will start comparing colors, but it really can't compare between not opaque and opaque. That probably doesn't make too much sense, but if you start using the tool, it'll make sense. So go ahead, and I use expand. Help me collect those little edges where things are kind of opaque, but not really opaque, to fill this area with color. I'll fill it with the pink so I can see the difference. And now if I deselect this area, you'll notice that, hey, I've got this very pretty and pink Holt, and he's all colored in. So, you know, now that I've done that, I'm going to lock this layer. And now layer mask is a very common feature. Photoshop has it. Krita has it. And it is invaluable. And it's this little button right here. And what that does is it's going to make it so no matter what color I put in here, it's only going to apply to him. And it makes coloring a breeze. But that said, it's easy to miss a spot. So I like to work from a common color that blends in with the background rather nicely. It's a little dark to see what's going on. So I'm going to use this. So now I mentioned earlier that I have a handy dandy tool that helps me decide what skin colors are going to be to keep them consistent. So I'll just bring that up so you can kind of see what I mean. And I usually make this live up above or below my canvas. I've got some space over here, so I'll just set it over there. And now my I have affected this layer. I'm not really going to explain what's going on here because it's kind of convoluted. But this is the basic idea. If you want to go out and Google what this is I've gone and I've made a layer that has a gradient overlay. And with this gradient overlay, I can kind of set up some basic colors. Well, I'm just going to kind of mock the same background that he's standing on. And we'll scale that, move it down. And I'm going to just adjust this color. And I'll lower the opacity until it's right about the area where he looks about right. And now that I've done that, I can just copy and paste these colors. And you can notice there's that stepping there that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to go in here to my brush presets, and I'm going to move that spacing down. And that's going to smooth right out. And I'm going to come in here I'm just going to very quickly lay down all the colors I need. And I get my reds. And I usually go color by color. So everywhere where there's red, quickly fill in red. Everywhere where there's gold. Quickly fill in gold. Now, if this looks rough, good, because it is rough. Once you start getting shading on there and you start messing around with some cool curved stuff, everything comes together very quickly, which is kind of fun to see, actually. I've had pages where I was very doubtful about how they were going to turn out quality-wise, only to be pleasantly surprised near the end where some guesses kind of came together into making a pretty decent page. I'm relatively new whenever it comes to comic art and illustration. I took an elective on it in college once, and it was pretend to know nearly as much as our editor does, who actually does comics for a living, or most people out there who do this kind of stuff. It's very fun. It's a good hobby. I don't think I have the chops to do it full time. It's hard, very hard work, and it's repetitive at times. But I do enjoy getting to draw. So it's fun for that reason. It's just a whole other order of effort to do as a job. Oh, which reminds me, I need to tell the editor of the comic that I had a dream about his comic the other night. The Crazy Russians. Now, once we're done with those, we get to move on to doing some of the details on the black card, such as well, what's it called? Volume, I believe it is. Let's see, let's call it that. Editing. And there's a complementary colors, everything else I mentioned. Alright. You see how having undo handy on your tablet can be very handy at times. All right, so now we've kind of gotten done with the majority of our, basic color lineup. Oh, almost forgot. This color. Oh, I think Richard's trying to call back in. He doesn't want me using Hangouts. Maybe if I can invite him in. Notes. Huh. Nope. You might be stuck on the outside. Oh, there we are.
Hey.
Was having trouble?
Oh yeah, my comp can't handle Steam and other crap. Steam just destroys it, so no streaming for me.
No.
Yep, I crashed. Womp womp.
That's a bummer. I was looking forward to getting to see some of that sweet, sweet Gothic goodness while I work.
BFG.
Hey, doesn't Steam itself have a streaming service now?
It does, but I can't. For whatever reason, I honestly I might not have looked at the graphics specs closely enough, and I might not be able to play BFG on my current setup. But I actually am getting a friend to upgrade all my shit next week. He's gonna come over and he's gonna come over and futz with give me a couple new graphics cards and a new processor, and I'll have to buy a new hard drive, I think.
I'm gonna have to. I will have to steal some of that sweet, sweet Battlefield Gothic storyline from you then.
Word.
Once you're done. So you're playing. So I'm just borrowing the magenta from that I typically use for shading.
Uh-huh.
Now, a little earlier, I explained what layer masking was, and it's useful here too, because at this point, all the lines on his face are really hard. They kind of stand out and they distract me from what's going on. So I'm going to, take the color of his skin and I'm going to move it down into more of the shaded territory, and I'm going to layer mask this. I'm going to opacity mask this layer so I can only draw inside the lines. Then I'm just going to come in here and paint all these.
Cool.
And that can be done with some of the other places where line art might be a little distracting as well. And now I usually don't do this as much on the comics because this, as you can see, it's kind of a very particular process. It's very, it's kind of slow and nitpicky. And unless I'm working on something very particular, I really don't like being nitpicky. So. And I'm going to just take this color. So now that I have this purple magenta color, I'm going to just start laying this down in areas where there would be shadow. And right now he's getting hit from behind with the light source, or I guess it's kind of more from his left side. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm going. And I'm actually going to use kind of a rough brush for this. And this layer is set to multiply again, so you get to see the color showing through. And now you'll see the one problem is whenever I go outside the shading, it kind of shows up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a clipping layer. And what a clipping layer is it takes that layer and it kind of humps it onto the layer before, and if there's any part of it that goes outside of the area that's been covered on the bottom layer, then that top layer will have those extra bits kind of masked out. And that doesn't mean they've been deleted, it just means that you can't really see it. Now, Krita doesn't have this feature per se at the moment. They have something very similar. I believe they're kind of working on it. And in the future, we may see a little closer comparability to this. With any luck. And I'm actually going to make this layer. That's fine. So, that's a little better. Now I'm going to work in kind of rough, broad strokes. Just kind of get a base for this down. Make sure my eraser is also a shape that I want. So I'm going to make that into kind of a rough brush too. And again, you know, how I'm choosing to shade this is all a matter of practice and observation. If one of the areas you're coming up short is just you don't quite know where to put a line or to where to put some color, that will come to you through practice, observation, and study. Now, the idea of copying another artist is kind of, everybody has their own opinion on it. So I'll do you the disservice of giving you mine as well. I think that if you're copying another artist, you're generally doing yourself a disservice as well as them. But if it's for learning and you know someone who you just like really respect or you really like their style, if you're just doing it for yourself to like learn a new concept, whether it's like rim lighting or you know, a particular smooth kind of lighting or working with a certain set of complementary colors, I really don't see anything wrong with just like kind of looking at that image and eyeballing it and, you know, learning from it a little bit, just so long as you don't copy it piece per piece or, you know, disavow that you took any inspiration from another piece. That said, there is a lot to learn from other people's work, and if you plan on going down that route, then you're probably going to be better off with like some of the actual masters, you know, of this stuff, the Alphonse Mucas of the world, who had a beautiful sense of like rhythm and color and composition and complementary color. And you know, I've definitely looked at their work before and taken little hints here and there, which is probably not incredibly obvious considering I'm drawing like a little mini chibi person, but every so often I'll draw something decent and you can usually see some shades of other artists, and I think that could probably be said for most people. But some of the best inspiration and knowledge you can take will probably be in the form of just observations of your natural world. You know, sit down and force yourself to draw a glass in the sunlight, so long as there's a lot of, you know, light on it, contrast, a lot of shadow. You know, draw something complicated. Open up your pencil sharpener, like one of those little rotary ones, and draw the rotary blade. Crumple up some tin foil and draw every single crinkle down to the finest detail. Use 100% blacks, 100% whites. You know, get all the way to the ends of the spectrum and really make it pop. And then go back in there and make sure you've got smooth transitions between the two. You know, forcing yourself to do these little menial tasks can be really freaking boring and honestly turn you off to art, so I don't do them too often. But they are, you know, they will upgrade your process to a certain point. On the other hand, if you want to do something that'll help you pick up some more knowledge, but won't, grind your soul into a fine powder, draw a character you like, draw someone you love, draw a parent or a brother or a loved one or your family dog. Get a picture of them and blow it up to like 300% and draw on a really big piece of paper and do it. Like, make yourself do it right. Take hours, force yourself to spend 4 hours on it. And check it, hold it up to a mirror, look at it backwards. Whenever you stare at something for a long time, you'll find that you will just gradually start to accept odd skews and mistakes that you wouldn't notice unless you held it up to a mirror and literally looked at it from another angle. So that's some of my excuse for getting good, as they say, and that's something I'm currently trying to do myself desperately. Maybe someday I too will get good. One can only hope. So I'm gonna very quickly just kind of clean up some things here. And then I'm gonna take you on the next step that I tend to use whenever I'm just very quickly shading something. So I'm gonna select this entire layer based on its opacity, as you can see. I do that by holding down Alt and then clicking on the actual picture layer, and you'll see that little box pops up. If you don't see that pop up, you should be able, I wonder if there's any way to, if you right click on that little image, you can add transparency mask based on the opacity on that layer. So now that I have that opacity, I'm going to inverse that based on where I put down shadow. And again, this is a combo of buttons, or you can right click on it and you can subtract transparency mask. And as you can see, that leaves me only with the highlights here that I haven't drawn in. And I'm going to come in on a new layer and I'm going to dump a big old yellow blob where those highlights are. And as you can see, that kind of does all the work for me. And I'm going to turn that into an overlay, which helps saturation and value pop at the same time. And I don't quite like how that's making his skin hyper bright. So I'm gonna move to a soft light instead. And soft light is going to even that out a little. So I like this, I'm getting closer to something I like. There's still some rough edges. I don't like how his book kind of blends into his body. I don't like how that foot is just like, you can barely see anything about it. So I'm gonna come in here on a new layer and I'm gonna start adding some details by hand. And I'm gonna just use a little brush right here. I'm gonna zoom right in and I'm gonna start grabbing color. This is just a simple standard layer. I'm going to turn my flow all the way up. And I'm just going to start doing some rim lighting and I'm going to start doing some details. So I'm going to take this real bright layer, bright color back here, and move this on top of the line art. And now I can start adding some of those highlights that'll help separate the foreground from the background. And now I see a lot of different artists use this technique to varying degrees. I've watched Galoo Game Lady do this, and she likes to use some really nice complementary colors. She'll kind of shade the area out of the light, and I really like the effect that does. It's how it turns out looking. I know some folks who use similar techniques, but now whenever I see it, I find it so indicative to her style. But even though I may be tempted to use it sometimes, I generally will stay away from it just because it's. I always feel like I'm copying her to some degree. That said, it is a very nice look, and it's still, it's not exactly something you can copy for someone wholesale, since it's kind of it's a very universal concept, I think. But That said, she probably does it best. So right there, I'm just kind of lightening by the edge there a little bit. Hello, Richard.
Hi. I've been here. I've just been muted.
No big.
I like that on his shoe. Looking good.
Oh, the little light catching on
Yeah,
the shoe.
that's nice.
Skinny little man heels.
Yep. The heel makes it worse when he puts the whole boot entirely into your ass.
Yeah.
And that's a large part of his job
Harder to get
description.
it out, yeah. He's so good at it.
That's right.
I was thinking, it's like, why does Talon seek his approval so much? And I think it's really the man's just so similar to his mother, both in love and parenting style and also stature.
There you go.
There you go. You have it. Some inner
Working.
psychological turmoil with Talon Gunner.
Of his horrible, shattered mind. God knows what's happening in there.
Probably Caiaphas Cain reruns.
And then just like bouts of sheer terror.
Lots of sheer terror. So there's this one Australian who hangs around my makerspace named Alex, and he's an excellent fellow. And every time he says Caiaphas, he calls him Caiaphas.
Huh.
Yeah, do you think that's the right pronunciation? I mean, I figure the guy is like almost closer, he's closer to being English than we are.
I will definitely say that Caiaphas Cain rolls off the tongue better. And yeah, in Caiaphas to me sounds a bit Irish Welsh, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Which means you're getting the hard C.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Caiaphas Cain. I always imagined it as like one of those syndicated vid shows that just won't end,
Mm-hmm.
And most people are just kind of okay with it, but it's past its heyday, and they've switched the main actor several times.
Right.
In 40K, they've probably VAT cloned him, right? So
Sure.
he has a contract into eternity.
Yeah, I'm sure it's basically the 40K version of Doctor Who. It will run forever.
Yeah. And for some reason, most people are just kind of okay with that. There we go. Do. All right, so now we're getting somewhere. So now that I've done this, at this point, I like to go in and add effects. So, Holt's place, it's always the eye. And this is where stuff gets cool. So now this is something Photoshop probably does better than most other programs, but I do know Krita has some capability. A layer effect is where you start doing nifty things to a layer based on some special attributes you can add to it. And now I'm just going to quickly recreate Grig's visor to kind of show you what I mean. So Holt's going to steal a little bit of his, what is that? I always forget what that little piece of device, what that device is called that picked the, shit, do I have Dark Heresy up? I do.
Hey.
I swear I have the hard copy of this too.
I know you do. I've seen it.
My creaking bookshelves that I have to move to my new place soon.
Is it a picked captor?
It's the one that lets you see in the dark.
Oh, Improviser.
Yeah. So that thing that Grig has.
Yeah. I was thinking when you were going through the comic on how I could cosplay Grig. I think I could make a decent Grig.
I think you could make a decent Grig.
It would be fun. It would be fun to make his visor.
Have any like well-built blonde, Aryan children? I think Grig is probably the closest to. He's got those big blue eyes, right? So.
Yeah, and I mean, like, other than his armor, he's not too tough, right? He's got the.
Could be a male parade. You want to do some crossplay?
I figure with so many folks in the cast that.
Gotta be somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, so set this to linear dodge, and you'll notice I was just kind of browsing through those different layer styles, and I eventually found one that worked kind of to my purposes. And now I can open up this little nifty layer style palette. And the way I got there is there's one of two ways. You can either double click on your layer itself, or you can go down to this little FX portion. And now here I can start to do some clever things, like I can add an inner glow, which kind of gives it this effect of having its own glowiness going on there. Very descriptive, I know, but I'm a wordsmith.
That's the Judge Dredd version.
Yeah, that's the Judge Dredd version. I can use this as an overlay to help increase that effect. Or I'll probably go up to some of the. As you can see, there's all kinds of effects. You just have to browse through and find what you want. One of the more interesting ones. If I kick it down a notch, and then if I drop shadow, I can make that a little better. Blue. I'm gonna just kind of make that into a color layer, I think. Yeah, that works just fine. Man, I want barbecue. It is a wonderful day for barbecue.
It is.
It is. And now I'm just gonna add a little gradient. And there you go. That's kind of along the lines of Grig's visor. I can actually take his straight from this reference stock over here. And his is a little bit more lame. Oh, unless I hit it. There it is. There we go. So that's Grig's classic visor. Now, if I want to do Holt's, no, it's a very similar concept. I'm just going to erase all this. And now, instead of those, and I'm going to clear that layer style, I'm going to make a red. And I'll just use this to make a line. I'm going to deselect so I can kind of affect everything. Oops. And there we go. And now I can do an outer glow. I can make that bigger. And again, this is one of those things you can find some great tutorials on. All the your layer styles. As you can see, they're fairly flexible. Kinds of stuff you can do. The secret to them, though, is really you want to. Oh, there we go. I think I have to click more. Sometimes Photoshop does this thing where if you open up the color palette, it'll start endlessly opening up help screens, and it'll lock up.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so I managed to, I think I managed to avoid that, so I'm going to very quickly just save my progress here. So autosave, do it. Incremental saves are usually built into a program, and they'll save your bacon. So here's your PSA. I couldn't have planned that any better. Crashing happens. Don't let it happen to you at the final hour. And I'll just give you a kind of a quick idea of the kind of things you can do with your layer effects. And the cool thing about this is that once I've done it once, and I found something that I like, and I'd probably go on and tweak this with a little bit more time, I can come in here and I can keep using it, and I can just kind of create more of these. I want to have like a tri-eye effect or something. Nifty. And let's see, let's tone down the inner shadow a little bit. And we'll tone down the drop shadow a little bit. And we'll come to somewhere that I'm kind of okay with. There we go. And now that that's done, it's all easy from here. It's just a couple quick steps I like to do. You've seen, you'll see I added another layer. This is the layer where I like to kind of jigger around with color. I call it color temperature. It's just wide swaths of color that I'm going to mask to the layers underneath. And it's just a big old wash. Eraser. There we go. Big old wash. The opacity. We'll just hit it like this. And then we'll hit the top like this. And then if I make this overlay, you can see I can affect the color temperature a little there and give it a little bit more of an ambience that I wasn't able to get across without actively color variants. And I like to make that very mild. So I'm just going to knock that down a little bit. So you can see there's still a difference. And now with all that considered, I'm going to select everything. And I'm going to copy merges all the layers together, and I'm going to paste it right on top. And now, you know, it looks about the same until I blur it. And this is just a trick I started doing in the past year. And now I'm going to add this back in as an overlay layer. And you'll see it kind of gives things a little bit of a dreamy quality. And I usually pick the black tones a little bit higher up where I know most screens can kind of see all the details, because my color range on this tablet is going to be a little different from most screens since it's kind of built to handle this kind of stuff. And so I'm going to try and find a comfortable midway. I like somewhere around there. Now we can see it with and without. I like that. See that with and without. I kind of like that. I'm going to knock it down a little bit though. And there you go. Kind of got a finished product. And you'll notice that if I trim all this stuff to the layer below, and here's where groups come in handy, because I'm going to take all of these layers and I'm going to put them all in a folder, like so. And I'm going to take these layers and I'm going to clipping mask them to this folder. And what that does is it makes it so you know, they all show up real nice on any color background there. So I can erase this folder on the edge. Now I have a graphic, you know, a little illustration I've made in just about an hour or so that can be you know, pasted just about anywhere. Has a nice transparency. And yeah, it wasn't too hard, was it? And I'm gonna just, if I mask these layers below, you'll see I've got on a whole bunch of transparency. I'm gonna select it all, copy it merged, and start a new file. And this is kind of where I do a little bit of post-production, which is like sharpening and stuff. I like to artificially sharpen some of my pieces to make the texture stand out sometimes. You'll notice there's a few errors here. I can just kind of come in and clean them up if I want to. Those kind of slip by sometimes. Get a couple more. I'm okay with those ones. Yeah. So there
Awesome.
you have. What do you think, Richard?
I love it.
Love it. Great.
It's my new avatar.
Sweet.
So excited.
So exciting. So
Yeah.
before I let you guys go, I'll give you one last demo. It doesn't matter what program you use to do this. There are a few common denominators, and Photoshop is a good way to show the difference between them. So this is the Save for Web feature. It's on Photoshop. I still think it's a pretty decent tool. It's going to show you the difference between your drawing and what it's going to look like when it's compressed. And so, you know, over here we have it as a JPEG. It's compressed as a very high resolution JPEG. Now, through your video compression, this is probably going to look pretty similar to you. To me, there is a little bit, like there's some artifacts around the edge. JPEGs are a image compression that will kind of eschew some level of detail for the sake of file size. And so the lower the quality, the more obvious that's going to become. And even on web, you should be able to see the difference between these two. Are you able to see that, Richard?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. And it's a pretty small file size at this point. It's like 40 kilobytes. But you can find a happy medium, and that happy medium I find is generally around 75 or so quality for a JPEG. Now, some other common file types are GIFs. The problem with GIFs is that they are palette restricted. The maximum number of colors you can have in a GIF is 256. The powers of Photoshop, you can actually select some of these colors or adjust them, or set dithering so you can kind of smooth out some of those areas where your palette just can't reach. But the fact of the matter is that it's just, or rather, ideal for this sort of thing. Now, your PNG is probably going to be your nicest looking format, but it's also humongous. Now, transparency, similar to GIFs, and you can see that transparency right there, but you'll also notice it's 1.5 megabytes. So I'm going to save it like this, just for my own sake, because it's a non-destructive file type. But whenever I upload it to DeviantArt or whatnot, if I do, it's going to be saved as a JPEG, just for the sake of everybody browsing on a metered connection or a slow connection. And yeah, so that's your basics on file types too. So here I'm gonna export this as a JPEG too. And you'll see it's only my cat is stealing my beans.
You've been at it for 2 hours, so I'm sure she's feeling neglected.
Yeah, she is. She's been good though. She hasn't walked on me once.
Nice.
Okay, so that's it. That's my tutorial.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions or
yeah, anybody?
requests? Probably gonna. Oh, maybe even make myself something to eat. I think that might be it. Well, thank you so much, Richard, for giving me a hand with all of this.
No problemo. We have some questions here in the doodad. One is about tablets and price points.
Okay. So what's the question then?
Can you elaborate on a couple tablets and price points?
Oh, certainly. So Wacom is probably one of the more common tablets out there, and if you look at their website, and we can do that now. Wacom tablet. We're going to see some of the main tablet types out there. Let's see. You're more likely to find like a Staples near you than a Wacom. And I've bought most of my tablets from, like Best Buy or something like that. And here you're starting to see like the $70 range ones and the $100 range ones, and a lot of these ones don't actually have erasers, and that's okay. I find as long as they've got these little buttons, at least some amount of buttons on the exterior, so you can start to map things like Alt and Control and eyedropper to them, you're gonna have yourself a lot easier time. I wouldn't spend more than like $150 on a tablet like this. Like, if you're going to have something without a screen, you might as well make it portable.
Sure.
If you want something with a screen, typically those are called Cintiqs, and that's a Wacom product. Look for Cintiq alternatives, and you will find many. And let's see if that tablet that Moses suggested is up here, because he really seems to like his. Now, he didn't
Plan or whatever.
Yeah, the Huion. Apparently, it's pretty popular. There's an Uji. Unova. There's your wacom Cintiq, 13 HD. Yep, there you go. That's this is a brother to Moses's, and as you can see, this one's like $700.
Yeah.
Typical for something this size. Cheap for something this size, and that's just a monitor. It's not a computer. Now, I did say setting up the drivers was a little bit of a pain in the butt, so keep that in mind. But there are alternatives to Wacom out there. That said, Wacom is very good at what they do. So if you've got an extra like $700, $800, $900 to throw around, by all means, one of these alternatives will probably do you all right. Alternatively, you can just go with one of the tablets that does not have a screen, and you'll be okay. Check consumer groups, like, read reviews of people who have used these before, who have used them for a while. Make sure all the screen doesn't get like dead pixels or jittering or weirdness going on. You'll have to do a little consumer research,
Yeah. Another question, would you be able to share some color layer tips? Do you make an action for it?
Often make actions for color layers. Now, what an action is, for somebody who doesn't know, is there's this really handy tool in Photoshop for, and they're called actions. And now I only have a few of them on here. I generally use actions whenever I'm working on production work, like the same thing over and over and over again to a set of things. But I find that most of my color layers require a sort of personal touch, so I don't really bother with setting up actions for them. And what an action will do is it actually like logs a number of things that you do in Photoshop and will replay them.
Got it.
Yep. So, like, let's see. I find more often than not, I end up copying layer styles and layer types. So if I right-click these layers, copy a layer style over here, and I can copy style attributes, and then I can paste it over into another window. So, for example, there was a while back whenever there was a lot of fire in scenes. Let me see if I can find one of those scenes. Or like the raindrops had it too. Was that 21? Yeah, like, let's check this out. No. So, like in this scene, you'll notice there's these little fire effects. I'm just gonna hide this and hide that. And that leaves me with these guys. If I wanted fire later on,
ooh, neat.
I can just, go back to, and I can paste the style layer. And then I'm just going to find a brush that's a little rough. I'm going to pick something that's kind of orange. And I can really go in there and just really effortlessly create these fire particles.
Super cool.
And that does most of my work for me.
Very cool.
So yeah, it saves a lot of headache. So that said, whenever it comes to finding the right layer, or just like layer style tricks, a lot of it's just kind of fiddling. And through fiddling for a while, I found some things that work pretty well for me. So, like, for example, I'm just going to see if I could like very quickly give this fire some shading. I think I have some particles that would do that fairly well. Let's give rock wall a try. And now I'm going to just mask this down. And if I can change around to some various, things I like here. But it's really just through fiddling,
Green fire. That's the serious shit.
You gotta watch out for that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, that warp portal today. Boy, was I stressed out.
Ooh, that was bad.
Yeah. We lived, though, and we sent all of the heretics where they, righteously belonged.
True facts, Richard.
I'm pretty happy that nobody in our A squad bought the farm. I was kind of expecting one
Yeah,
of us to.
I was kind of expecting that too, so yay.
Good job, us.
If Edda had gone, you would have had a pretty upset commissar on your hands.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting either you when you were surrounded by all those swords, or Sam, because Sam's kind of a glass cannon.
Nah, dog. I'm son of Fenris. I don't go out like that.
Yeah, you don't go out easy.
Chump ass Maleficarum using motherfuckers trying to take me.
Oh yeah, but down in the tunnels, I was expecting Tori to go.
You were badly wounded. I was doing all kinds of dumbass hero shit with the psychers.
Yeah, you were pushing it too. That was awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
MVP.
we lived. That eviscerator is so broken.
Oh my God,
you should not have let me just have
Well, you
that.
should, you know what you should do is now you should get chain expertise and combine that with the eviscerator, and then just none of us will ever want to play with you anymore.
He's so slow, though.
Is rather slow, beefy.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Do you have a preferred brush set? I like Kyle T. Webster's. I'd also like to mention Lazy Nizumi, since Photoshop doesn't have its built-in smoothing tool.
Yep.
It works with all Adobe products, and it's great for organic and mechanical draws, too.
You are very right about Lazy Nizumi. I need to download that again. I had it for a while, and I have been too lazy for Lazy Nizumi to go back and find it. And right on with the brush set. That's a good one. I do have some favorites. You can find them on my DeviantArt. If you just go to my favorites there, you'll find the Lazy Brush Set, which is one that I use. I also have a Textures and Resources folder that has some more brushes in it, as well as some textures that I like to use. So you can find all those guys there. But that said, I don't use, like, my cat's eating my beans again. I don't use about 3/4 of them, so I went through and I edited them, and I kind of arrived at the set that I'm comfortable with. So, go out there and try them. Try some new ones that you've never tried before, and maybe you can incorporate that into your own favorite set. And I do have to get my hands on some sweet Lazy Nizumi. And save myself some headaches. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's all the questions there. Many thanks to Inquisitor Vaughn for stopping in and saying hi. Hello there, friend. We also had Cameron, Sean, and Gabriella who asked questions in the chat here. To everybody else who's watching, and for those of you who are watching in the video later on. Thank you so much for joining us here and for joining me at watch Kaiser, do her work and being amazed. This person is on fire. They are not having a great time. Only warm.
Having a fantastic time.
Only warm.
Warm. Anyways, you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaiser.
And
scene.